Lauren Jones was getting ready to leave work for the night when she felt someone come up behind her and grab her butt.
Said, "What the hell do you think you're doing?"
Standing there was one of Lauren's managers.
I really got to thinking about it as, what do I do?
Lauren decided to report it to her boss. She says she didn't want the man she says grabbed her to get in trouble. She just didn't want it to happen again.
I specifically told him, I'm not looking for a lawsuit. I'm not looking for anything.
That report prompted a meeting with Lauren's general manager and the owner of the company that holds the Sonny's franchise, Ed Tubal.
Lauren.
Hey, how are you?
You know Ed Tubal?
Ed Tubal, I've heard of him. We've studied him.
You're listening to a recording of the meeting with Lauren and the owner of the restaurant.
The problem is, you've been with us less than a month.
I agree.
He's been with us 15 years.
I agree.
And has never had anybody ever accuse him of that.
I agree.
Because he's never done it.
Okay.
So that's our position right now.
Okay.
They at first wanted me to tell my side of the story, but when I tried to, I got cut off by the owner. He wouldn't even let me get what happened in.
All I want here is to be on record that he did touch me.
Well, we can't accept that.
If I cannot, my purpose is talking to
It is
Derek.
on record, but I don't accept
The
it.
recording ends with Tubal telling Lauren she's fired.
So am I fired? I need to know right now. I'm not quitting.
By the way,
I'm not
what you
quitting.
told Danielle is
I'm
not
not
what she
quitting.
told us.
I'm not quitting.
We don't want you to quit. We're terminating you.
Okay.
Right now.
Glad to have
You're
that.
terminated.
Have a good day.
And you're not allowed on this property.
We played the tape for Charlotte employment lawyer Chris Stryanese, who isn't associated with this case.
My initial impression is that if you were going to put together a seminar on the wrong way to fire someone, this would be the first exhibit in that seminar.
Stryanese said if this tape winds up in front of a jury, the consequences for Lauren's former employer could be severe.
I would have a very easy time concluding that that's what's going on and that, the employer has engaged in illegal conduct here.
So what do you hope happens now?
Women come forward, but don't have to be afraid. And I was afraid at first to say something, but I thought the way I was handling it wasn't going to cost me my job.
Reporting in Charlotte, Nick Oxner, WBTV, on your side. When the torrential storms dumped a flood of water on South Carolina early this month, residents saw firsthand what happens when dams break. Now, residents who live along the Yadkin River are worried the same thing could happen closer to home. There are 4 dams along the river, all owned by Alcoa, and each holds millions of gallons of water. These Alcoa-owned dams are out of sight and out of mind for most residents. They're so far away you have to either get in a boat or up in a helicopter to see them. Despite that, if one of these were to fail, thousands of homes along the river could be in jeopardy.
If something was to happen to that dam, and it's 98 years old, it said that it would send a wall of water to our house and it'd be there in like 12 minutes.
Wesley McCaskill lives in a neighborhood below the 4th dam. When he noticed these evacuation signs in his neighborhood, he started asking questions. Those questions led him to this map made by Alcoa, estimating homes along the river would start seeing floodwaters in as little as 12 minutes in the event of a breach.
You've got to be real concerned for you and your family.
We are. I really don't want to be up here anymore.
McCaskill and his neighbors learned Alcoa has an emergency action plan of what to do if a dam fails. But when they asked their local emergency management office for a copy of the plan, the answer was no, because attorneys for Alcoa asked that the records not be released.
That needs to be public knowledge.
Alcoa says it doesn't, because federal regulators have classified the plans as critical energy infrastructure information. In a statement, company Vice President Mark Gross said, quote, "We've worked closely with these agencies to plan ahead and have posted signs directly below the dams showing people how to safely evacuate the area. We've also developed an early warning system for residents directly below the dams and distributed brochures to educate residents on what to do in case of an emergency." One part of that pamphlet says certain residents in the region are at the greatest danger if a dam were to fail, but the pamphlet doesn't say which residents. That's not enough for Wesley McCaskill, who says the lack of details and secrecy surrounding a plan meant to keep his family safe is concerning.
I don't see much of a plan at this point, other than not coming back.
Through our TVs, through our earbuds, the stories suck us in.
Serial, one story told week by week.
What caught my attention,
including Colin Miller, law professor at the University of South Carolina.
As you looked at it more, there were more mysteries there, more legal issues, and just more questions.
Serial took on the case of Adnan Syed, a high schooler convicted of killing his ex-girlfriend in 1999. But the investigation was messy, and millions were now asking, did he do it? Miller blogged about the case, teamed up with lawyers working Syed's appeal, and together developed their own podcast.
Hi, and welcome to the 11th episode of Undisclosed Estate versus Adnan Syed.
The first time, it was this interactive experience where people had access online to the court documents, and they were able to interact with other people and develop these theories. So I think it really has changed the game.
I don't even get interested in murder mysteries or anything like that.
Meet Valerie,
a fashion designer by trade, and so this was very unusual for me.
One of those crowdsourcing investigators. She lives in Texas, 1,000 miles away from the banks of the Catawba River in Gaston County, where a pretty college co-ed, Ira Yarmolenko, was found strangled in 2008.
There were so many little pieces of evidence that just didn't fit together.
Two cousins fishing nearby were accused. Neil Casada died right before trial. Mark Carver,
guilty of first-degree murder,
was convicted. Valerie stumbled upon the case only because her parents were watching a program on TV.
Immediately when I got done, I had the feeling that these two fishermen had to be innocent.
She did her own research and connected with others across the country. Up sprang a website, freemarkcarver.com.
Do you have any doubt today that the right man was convicted?
I have no doubts whatsoever.
Locke Bell is the Gaston County District Attorney.
There's several thousand hours of looking at every single person, and everything kept coming right back to them.
Investigators had the suspect's DNA on the outside of Yarmolenko's car, but they didn't have it on Yarmolenko herself.
There were no fingerprints, no footprints, none other evidence at all to back up the validity of this DNA.
Valerie thinks it's possible Yarmolenko took her own life. She even traveled to the crime scene to act out the theory.
I got a chance to experience what that might have been like.
District Attorney Bell isn't buying it.
I think they need to get a life.
Dwayne was our first exoneration.
Attorney Chris Muma doesn't think it was suicide either, but she also doesn't think Carver is the killer.
I believe there is evidence that will definitively prove his innocence.
Muma works for the North Carolina Center on Actual Innocence, a nonprofit whose mission is to free the wrongly convicted.
It's about not just righting the wrong for the person who's in prison, but righting the wrong for the victim who never received justice.
But does law enforcement see it that way when you show up?
When I show up? No, they think I want all the guilty people out of prison, and that's not what we're trying to do.
She's been doing this kind of work for 16 years, and she's noticed the spike in interest since Serial and Making a Murderer.
It's good for justice if the justice system reacts appropriately.
And here in North Carolina,
Billy James Grimes is free at last.
High-profile cases of misguided justice have led to reforms.
I'd like to think we're at the chances of wrongful conviction are actually decreased.
Perhaps. But the public's interest in the possibility certainly hasn't.
The heroin comes from Afghanistan.
We'll call him Riley. He didn't want us to use his real name.
Molly comes from Germany.
Easy to figure out why.
The cocaine comes from Peru.
All of those things he bought online. All of it delivered, undetected, straight to his home.
The first time was a little buy, just to make sure everything was legit. And we've heard stories about, keys being fake before.
They weren't. And the buys got bigger and more frequent.
I mean, with the quality, you kind of figure it's got to be coming from straight off bricks.
And don't think for a moment this is rare.
It's pretty well known within the addicted population.
Charles O'Dell is a drug counselor at the Dilworth Center in Charlotte.
You can find these marketplaces that will basically sell you anything.
And you really mean anything?
I mean anything.
He will tell you nothing really surprises him when it comes to users getting drugs. But O'Dell says when he heard this, it was different.
You can purchase in the privacy of your own home with total anonymity in a way in which they cannot be tracked by anyone and have it delivered to your home It's a very, very scary scenario.
Here's how it works. This is the internet you know. News, social media, shopping. It's easy to access, it's easy to use. But this is actually just a tiny fraction of all that is out there on the internet. The vast majority of information is on what is called the deep web.
What the deep web really means is that's that unstructured part of the web.
WBTV cybersecurity expert Teresa Payton says, simply put, stuff on the deep web doesn't pop up with a Google search.
It would be the equivalent of leaving a major interstate highway to go on foot through a forest without a map and a compass.
It was created for legitimate reasons, protecting your bank account, the anonymity of those reporting human rights abuses. But those good intentions drew in bad actors who created the dark net. It's the Wild West of internet commerce where, through a simple software download, digital footprints are dusted over. It's nearly impossible to track down who is running a site or from where. Same for the customers who visit.
This is one of those things you want to talk to your kids about. These are not monitored places. This is not eBay.
But it looks like it, and it's not hard to get there.
Let's download, see what happens.
It took us about 10 minutes to figure it out.
You got a menu right on the side.
Right there for purchase, drugs, guns, you name it. Sellers rated by reliability of delivery, by quality of product. And if you think there's a money trail to follow, nope. Transactions are made in digital currency, Bitcoins.
You keep your money in escrow until you sign off and say it was good and everything was gravy. Once you say everything's cool, they get their money, you get your stuff.
And just like the websites, the currency's movement is virtually impossible to trace.
It does make law enforcement's hard incredibly challenging.
Riley, who is now clean and sober and working, knows it all full well. Law enforcement is operating in the dark.
Oh, there ain't much they can do about it.
It stretched from the...
John Stafford lives 3 doors down from a pile of toxic rubble. He spent the better part of a year trying to get it cleaned up.
Everything behind you is contaminated with asbestos right now?
As per the letter from the state, yes, it's been confirmed.
He's referring to a letter from the State Department of Health and Human Services, who, in December, determined debris from the decades-old building was full of asbestos. But emails sent just months earlier by the same agency sang a different tune. In this email from October 7th, 2015, a DHHS supervisor tells a colleague at the Department of Labor there's no toxic debris in the pile of rubble.
Somehow in the process, a false environmental report was made that was accepted by the state.
Stafford said he could see material in the rubble that looked like asbestos, and that didn't match up with what officials in Raleigh were saying.
We raised concerns about it. They fell on deaf ears. We took samples ourselves, had them tested. They tested positive. That did finally bring the state in.
Records Stafford got from the state showed 43 of 45 samples tested positive for asbestos. Ultimately, the contractor demolishing the building was told to stop work and to hire a crew certified to remove asbestos to test and clean up the debris. That hasn't happened. Recently, a fence was put up around part of the lot, but not the entire site. There's still nothing protecting nearby neighbors from the pile of dangerous debris sitting right next door.
So my hope would be that the county, the city, and the state combined their resources, quickly abated this project, cleaned it up.
The longer this sits here, the longer you have a toxic dump at the end of your street.
Every time the wind blows, every time it rains.